so much for joining us. This is the Voice of Reason podcast. My name is Sean Phillips. I am your host, joined along with my two co-hosts, Andy Van Bever and Travis Kirkendall. And today we have a wonderful guest, my good friend, Mr. Sam Mousa. Gentlemen, how is everyone doing tonight?
Fantastic.
Yeah,
And
excited to be here. We got our awesome guest on, Sam. Thank you.
and Sam decided not to go with a video because he's too handsome for us to make us all look bad. So he was kind and courteous enough to leave a blank screen. So that's why we have the Voice of Reason podcast over his face. So thank you, Sam, for.
And not enough cotton covering his genitalia this evening. He is freeballing on his couch, joining us today.
Too much information. Too much TMI.
That's 100% like I like answer just too much on my Monday.
Have you guys actually heard of that teacher that was fired from her job because she thought she was done with the Zoom meeting and went to her bathroom, which was in her room, and pooped, and it was so loud they heard her over the Zoom. She ended up being fired for it.
Yes.
I did not hear about that. When was this?
Oh my gosh.
This was kind of. I heard about it a few weeks back. It was on another podcast I listened to. They were talking about it, and I looked up the actual story, and it was a real thing that had actually happened. I was like, you technically
That's
didn't
terrible.
do anything wrong. You just didn't know how to work the technology, and it cost you your job because you took a shit in front of a bunch of fourth graders.
Oh my God. Oh, poor lady.
How do you explain that at your next job? What happened at your previous?
Well, I was taking a crap, and what happened was some kids heard me, and
I love the one where that guy was a cat on the video.
The lawyer?
Yeah, the lawyer.
oh yeah, yes, sir, I am not a cat. Really, I'm not a cat. It's not. Oh my gosh.
No, yeah, we know. No, what I love about it is, she got fired for pooping in a bunch of fourth graders, and she might have a hard time getting a job. However, there's a section on the internet where she could actually turn that into a very profitable business if she just keeps rolling with it. She could continue to just do that on camera, and she'll make a living.
Yeah.
She would.
Yeah.
For everything.
Oh.
Exactly. Well, before we dive deep and dirty, we do have a great show planned for you guys today. We have all kinds of different things to talk about. Some things coming out of left field, right field. It's been another crazy week. Thankfully, this one involved a couple less shootings that broke the news. And I mean that in all seriousness. This week has kind of toned down a little bit in comparison to the last 2 weeks that we've spoke. There's been a lot of different shifts, a lot of different changes that have happened in the lovely United States and across the globe. But before I dive too deep into that, I am going to pass it over to Sam just for a second. I've known Sam coming up on 2 years now. We actually discussed this recently, and I thought Sam fit the bill pretty well for what we wanted to bring on the Voice of Reason podcast here. Sam, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, where exactly you're from. Give us a bit about your background, because you are an interesting character, even though there's not a whole lot of hair on that head. You still do seem to pack a punch. So please introduce yourself to our listeners.
Hey everybody. So I'm Sam. I am a bar manager out in St. Louis. I originally come from Toronto. I'm a brown guy that has been raised extremely moderately in my entire life, politically, religiously, and everything. So I like to think that I'm pretty middle of the pack. I joined the Marine Corps right out of high school. Then they sent me to school. And then I had a boring desk job, and I said, no, we're going to make people happy for a living. So I moved to St. Louis. I put liquor in cups. And sure enough, Sean asked me one day, hey, you want to do some stand-up? And I said, sure, let's try it. And then we did that. I told a bunch of jokes about what it's like to be racially ambiguous to a bunch of white people. They felt really guilty and laughed their asses off. And then after that, he says, hey, you want to come do a podcast? And I said, sure. And
he's going to do the same thing on this podcast. So
Fantastic.
White guilt is going to hit us pretty hard for tonight, boys. Let me just
white privilege, white guilt. Here we go. That's why. Then that's why we have it blacked over the screen. We have it blocked on the screen because we're racially ambiguous around here too. So
We actually do show we live stream to a lot of Southern Baptists, and we want to keep them watching. So we did have to make sure that there was
yes.
everybody, but at the same time,
Yep. We need to keep our viewership up. We need to keep our viewership up. Nothing.
Rough out there in Missouri, man.
Hey, I mean, on the bright side, like this, if this is a debate podcast, like that's fuel to the fire. That's right there. I existing. I'm already doing a good job.
You are filling the void for us. That's exactly what you're doing.
So Sam, I do want to ask you, because we're from a couple different sects where we are right now. I myself live in Jeff City. Andy lives in the small town of Pittsfield, Illinois, and Travis is all the way out in Chicago, Illinois. So we've had discussions on kind of what is happening in the realm of our worlds with COVID and everything. And I want to say that you and Travis probably have a more similar experience. But can you tell us what it's like running a bar right now in the midst of this pandemic, and how has St. Louis kind of cracked down on Uptown, the nightclub and bar that you run, and some of the other businesses in that area? Is it getting better, or does it seem to kind of be a roller coaster for you guys right now?
So you're right. It's definitely very roller coaster-esque, and there's like some actually like pretty funny, waves and tides when it comes to what it's like for enforcement at the bar. So first and foremost, let's state with nobody likes masks. Nobody likes going to a bar, having to, like, how are you going to go to a social environment where you're supposed to talk and meet strangers and flirt and do all that, but you have to stay 6 feet away and you can't show your face, and there like all of these rules. So there's a huge disparity when it comes to telling a guest, hey, put your mask on, and they're like, well, I don't like it. But they for some reason think it's the enforcement of the rule is coming from you and not from the health department, who is sitting there coming to the bar 3 days a week, walking around with a clipboard, watching you watch people with masks, writing you warnings for not saying something fast enough. Or, this person took their mask down to take a sip and it was in their hand their drink was still in their hands. Are you allowed to talk to them or not? Basically, the health department isn't saying anything to people. They're just threatening businesses with shutting them down. And they say, hey, look, if you don't do our enforcement for us, you lose your job. You lose it for 2-3 weeks and deal with it. So I'd like to state that the health department should have offered, resources to bars to say, hey, maybe this is how you want to enforce it. Or just be at the bar itself handing out $5 tickets. That'd be really rad, because I don't want to hold an 18-year-old door security person responsible for getting punched in the face because he told a group of 6 dudes, hey, put your mask on or I have to kick you out of the bar. So that's a fucking nightmare. And now with the vaccines going out, people are, I don't have to wear a mask because I'm vaccinated. No, shut up. We don't know that you're not vaccinated. And more importantly, the health inspector's still going to stand there and take my job away because you're not wearing a mask. They don't give a fuck about your vaccination. They're not going to talk to you, just me. So,
Right.
One of the things that I'm kind of curious about is just the lack of enforcement. I mean, it really is. It really is just there's such a double standard between the city and between us out here in rural America. I mean, around here, Sam, in our town of Pittsfield here, we have a town of 3,500 people. And you walk into a Walmart and they say, could you please put on a mask? And they basically flip them the bird, walk on in the store, and that's it. And our chief of police, he came out about a month into COVID and he put a thing on Facebook and he said, we are no longer going to enforce mask. It's up to the individual businesses, because what they were doing was they were getting the Pike County Sheriff's Department was getting a call that first day of the mask mandate here in Pike County. They had like 6 or 7 calls to Walmart of people who were refusing to wear a mask. And he finally said, "Look, we have meth heads to crush around here. We can't be spending our time going and enforcing mask mandates."
How large is the town of Pittsfield?
3,500.
3,500. What's crazy is I know exactly what post you're talking about, and it had thousands.
Yes.
Thousands
Oh my. I think yes.
Like it went pretty viral nationwide because people were talking like,
Yep.
this is how you need to enforce this. Like across. That's. I remember that post specifically because at first there was a lot of confusion because we're in Pike County, Missouri. People kind of thought that was from the Pike County, Missouri Sheriff's Department.
Nope.
They were like, because the bar that I was working at the time, we were getting people talking about that. We're like, look, that's not us. That's a different Pike County. So,
And we, I mean, I tell you when the governor shut down, restaurants to only curbside and everything like that, our local restaurants here were saying screw it, and they were still having open dining, but they were still social distancing with the booths and everything, but they said we have to operate. And I remember specifically, I checked my memories on my Facebook. It was a year ago yesterday. We have a local ice cream place here in town, and the guy opened up without getting, I guess, approval from the town fathers or whatever. And we were out there. Me and my kids were getting ice cream, and the owner was out front talking to an officer, and he was saying, "I've got to open." And she's like, "Well, these people have to wear masks." She's like, "We're outside," and it was just there's a lot going on with it. I think that people still, I still a year later, I still don't know that we know everything there is to know about this virus.
Yeah, and I mean, so like and I think part of the huge disparity is that, like I always tell everyone, like what might be appropriate for the city might be extremely inappropriate for out in the middle of nowhere. Like if your town is 3,500, and you guys saw 0 cases the entire time, then why shut everything down? Why not just, like, if you know everyone that comes into your business, probably not that big of a deal if not everyone's wearing a mask. But, in the city where I literally interact with 1,000 people a day. That's not an exaggeration. That's easily, like, my Friday night, I am within 6 feet of 1,000 people at some point by the end of my day.
and that's just during your porn shoots. That's not even when you actually.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh!
Some of those scenes get.
Please remember that we do have younger viewers, please.
That's right.
Oh,
No,
jeez.
Well, Sam, thank you. I'm actually, because I've been out of St. Louis for so long, I kind of like to hear kind of what goes on there as opposed to here, because in the city that I live in, at least, you can kind of tell some of the businesses are very pro-mask, and they want you to wear a mask. They require you to upon entry, and others do not. Others just don't care, and it's kind of, I like to look at it like Target and Walmart are kind of like if you go into Walmart, probably 80% of people are not wearing a mask, whereas Target kind of requires you to, and I think it sets the standard for what store you kind of want to walk into. But I do kind of want to jump into a couple of things, a couple of the main topics that we're going to discuss this evening, and one of them that I'm super interested in because it's kind of making the waves, and really, really in this past week, this was something that I didn't even know was really being voted on, was really going to be pushed in the spotlight, and has now caused all kinds of issues. And it seems to really always stem from Georgia. Georgia is one of those states that you actually see quite a bit of, and what people don't understand is things like Atlanta is now becoming the new Hollywood, right?
Right.
It is a huge state as far as the entertainment business goes. There are a lot of films and television shows that are shot in Georgia. Shows like WandaVision, the new Marvel series, was all shot in Georgia. This is a huge, and when we think Hollywood, we kind of think more left-leaning. So I'm actually really interested to see what happens to film productions and different things like that that actually take place in Georgia now because of when we see trends like this. And I am going to let Travis or Andy, I'm not sure which one of you guys really kind of want to dive into what exactly we're going to be discussing, which is the new Georgia voting laws. And I'm really excited to get your guys' insight. Is there one of you two that specifically kind of want to talk a little bit about?
Well, Travis, if you want to open up with it.
And what you guys saw.
I guess I'll try to start it. So
Yeah, take it away.
this is a 98-page law. There's a lot.
I did look at it, and
going
it
on with
is
this.
insanely lengthy.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I did not read through the whole thing. I mean, there's times I'm reading through this thing and I'm like, what the hell am I reading? Like, there's a lot to it. But anyway, there's a lot of controversy if people haven't heard about it right now. I mean, it's all over the news. I mean, you saw the MLB just, they canceled the AllStar game in Georgia, was it?
And they're moving. I forgot where they said they're moving it to, but yeah.
Yeah, there was that.
And the thing is, there is with baseball. Baseball is one of those sports that the All-Star game is pretty much a week. There's a week of activities. It is a very, very big thing for baseball because it's middle of the season. It's so much different than like the NFL All-Star game might be. So it's a pretty big deal for baseball.
Here's another one. This is 2 hours ago. Saying San Francisco might ban city-paid travel to Georgia to protest, quote in quotations, discriminatory voting law. So I mean, that's just one of the many things that's going on. I mean, there's been celebrities, athletes. There's a lot of controversy. And
by the way, just to interrupt just a second, they said that the All-Star game. A couple of our listeners did say that the All-Star game has moved to Colorado.
That makes sense.
Like, former President Obama came out and supported the MLB in their decision. I'm pretty sure former President Trump came out and supported the voting law. So there's been, bickering going on there.
What social media site was he able to do that with?
I don't know, Parlor? Or One America News? I don't know.
He probably sent smoke signals from El Largo.
Right.
Well, he is. If you guys haven't heard, he's actually planning on starting a social media service. I don't know what it is.
I've heard that. Yeah.
What
I'm gonna guess no one's gonna be able to be banned.
Just unless you're on the
only
list.
people he doesn't like.
Yeah,
Everyone's allowed to
right.
participate.
Right. I doubt that, but anyway.
I'm surprised he doesn't just have his own social media site that's literally just him. Like, he is the only person. Any other account that's on there's a following account. You can't tweet stuff. You can't comment anything. It is literally just like Trumper. Like, that's it.
He should start an
That's all it
OnlyFans.
is.
I mean,
He should.
Well, I think that he is what he's trying. What this and Travis, I'll let you go ahead and talk about this too some more. But what this is trying to do is trying to it's all about how people are interpreting what this bill is and what it does and what it doesn't do. So I'll let you go ahead and do it
Before
before.
we finish this, V, I do want to ask you an over/under question, and we can carry on with it further later. Do you think Trump runs for president during the next election?
Yes. No
Do you
doubt.
think
No
he does
doubt.
it under the Republican Party?
No, because
Okay.
because the Republicans are cutting their ties with him. I mean, everything that's going on with Mitch McConnell and their little feud. Mitch McConnell right now is, unfortunately, I believe, is the biggest face in the Republican Party right now. And
That's a horrible face to me.
oh my gosh, I saw a picture of him smiling online the other day. He looked like Jim Carrey from a series of unfortunate events or something, and I was,
quality reference.
yeah. So, but no, I think I hate to see that will happen, but I mean that it will probably be the split because it reminds me all of 1912 all over again when Teddy Roosevelt tried to run for the Republican Party and they went with Taft and they split up and everything like that. I see the same thing happen in the Republican Party this year, in 2024.
I mean, I don't know if that's. I mean, you say you hate to see it happen. I don't know if that's a bad thing.
I don't think it's a bad thing, but
I think if the Republic, like, because let me straight this. I previously stated I was a moderate. I really don't care if the Republican Party or the Democrats win. But I'll say that this dude was impeached twice and lost the popular vote twice. If I am a member of the Republican Party, I don't want him running. If the Republicans like can find a new champion, like
that's just it. They don't. That's just it. They don't have any. That's the thing. The Republicans do not have a face that they can go with. They don't. I mean, You're not going to go with Mitch McConnell. Mike Pence is our. Mike Pence. He's glad that this is over because after that whole debacle at the Capitol, he was thrown under the bus and he's like, screw you, Trump, and the horse you rode in on. I'm not going to have anything to do with this. And he went back to retirement in Indiana, and he's currently happy with it. I guarantee.
Well, I mean, so actually, that's the thing I had a question on. Like during the proceedings, during the Capitol storming, like they kept referring to Pence as Mr. President. Like, did they temporarily invoke the 25th, or
no? That's just when he was the president. When he was he's the president of the Senate and everything else like that. So
okay, so that's what that. Okay.
Yeah. But go ahead, Travis. We all interrupted you, but go ahead.
No, you guys are good. I like the discussion. I'll just kind of go over a couple things that I was reading up. So one of the things I saw. The new law says that every county has to have a minimum of one drop box for absentee ballots. However, the new law also limits how many drop boxes each county can have and how many hours and days the boxes can be open, where they can be located. I'm assuming this has to do with there were some issues with the absentee ballots and the drop boxes. Or at least that was what was being said, that there was an issue. I don't know if it was ever proven or not. But anyway, going on. There was one I thought was really interesting. Apparently, in this bill, they're not allowed. Food and drink apparently is not allowed to be provided to the voters. Now they can
by a third party.
By a third party, correct. I guess hold
on. There is an exception, except for like holy artifacts. So if you give holy water, like you literally. People were like, so if we bless the water, we can hand it out, and the answer was like resoundingly yes.
Really? That's interesting.
Wow.
I love politics. So yeah, there was that, which I thought was kind of interesting. There was they changed the amount of days on the absentee ballot, so it can be sent out to voters 29 days before the election, down from the previous 49, and voters are allowed to request an absentee ballot maximum of 78 days before the election, down from 180.
Mm-hmm.
The applications have to be received by election officials no later than 11 days before the election, and reduction from the previous effective deadline of 4 days before the election. So what I'm seeing overall is, they're making the windows tighter, especially for like people who are wanting to do absentee ballots. They're really making it to where, like, if this is the time, this is when you have to do it, and if it doesn't get in that time, it doesn't count. And I guess wasn't there a lot of ballots that were, like, late or going in? Wasn't that what they were saying the issue was?
Yes, and
so
the whole, right, and the thing about it was, and I was reading over this today, and then I'm trying to look for the article I was reading today from the New York Times about. It said 10 ways that how this new law is going to be restricting voters even more. First of all, where is Atlanta at as far as, are they the fourth largest city or fifth largest city in the United States? Where are they at? I don't even know where they rank at. I want to
Google that
because I think they're up there, and of course I have a lot of family down in that area. And Atlanta, when you think of Atlanta is not the Atlanta that you think of. It's not a southern redneck city. It is a largely international city.
It is the 37th most populous city in the
Wow,
United States.
that's amazing.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, but still, they have the population is so diverse in that city, and then you look at. What was the thing? Didn't they do a thing about the voting hours too?
Yes, they limited voting hours. I don't know where I read that, but I know it was the hours. Let's see, they limited the hours of absent. Anyone who shows up to vote in the right county but in the wrong precinct will not have their They will not have their provisional ballot counted unless it is cast after 5 p.m. and the voter swears a statement that they cannot make it to the right precinct on time. I'm seeing that. But I know they limited the hours on when you can drop off the absentee ballot. So I don't know. There's a lot going on with this bill. But what I don't understand is, and I haven't seen anything, because there's been some people saying that this voting law is like discriminatory, and like I even read something about it being racist, but I don't see anything in here.
That's the big deal, and where that comes from.
Yeah, where does that come from? Because I'm not seeing anything.
It's in regards to people who have the requirement of photo ID. But there's extra steps that one can go through that I don't see, especially like when I see things in the news, or whether like when this was trending #1 on Twitter, is there's a couple different options. One of them also being like you can give them the last 4 of your social. There's a couple different options, but the main focus like that you're seeing in the news or when people are tweeting or when they're talking about it is that the idea is that typically, again, what I'm reading, what I'm seeing is individuals are saying that predominantly individuals of color from different ethnic backgrounds are less likely to have a valid ID. And by taking that and by needing one, requiring one when you go to vote, they're saying that is what is discriminatory, is because they're saying that these individuals might not potentially be able to get a valid ID or cannot produce a valid ID.
Right.
That is what they're saying is discriminatory, specifically towards individuals of different ethnic backgrounds or different colors. That is where that language, that is where that is coming.
Yeah, and that's what I'm looking at right now, Sean. It says the strict new ID requirements. In order to confirm the identity of the voter, such forms shall require the elector to provide his name, date of birth, address as registered, address where the elector wishes ballots to be mailed, and the number of his or her Georgia's driver's license or identification card issued. If such elector does not have a Georgia's driver's license or identification card, the elector shall affirm his fact in the manner prescribed in the application, blah, blah, blah. And then the other thing was, if they don't have any of that, their social, like it says, Social Security. So we've talked about what this bill is saying. What do you guys think?
I don't. That doesn't make sense that it's being labeled as. In my opinion, that doesn't make sense that this is being labeled as something that's racist or discriminatory. I mean, I think, in my opinion, that's a common sense thing. You should have a valid. I mean, now social last 4. I think that's great. I mean, that's a good verification.
So
Go
with that, like, hold on. So like, this stuff isn't new. Like, there have been this has been ruled upon in the past. Hey, like, is adding a $5 voting fee illegal? So let's just say replacing my license in the state of Kansas was like $12.
Okay.
So hypothetically, do you believe that if, let's just say, all right, I don't have a license today. In order for me to go get a license, I have to go spend $12. Do you believe that $12 affects rich people or poor people more?
I mean, poor people more.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the obvious answer. It's not a trick question. Because if I make, $8 an hour and I work $40 a week, then I'm pulling a $200 paycheck or something after taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And of that $200 paycheck, 5% of my paycheck's already gone because I have to get an ID. That kind of sucks. That kind of sucks a lot. And if there's a correlation of wealth and race in Atlanta, which there is, then you have a lot of impoverished area which are highly black. And we're not even saying, and that's not even, do they have DMVs that actually that are actually sufficient, that will actually replace them on time or not lose them, because that's the thing. Since moving to St. Louis, a lot of the government offices here are trash. They are so bad. I will pay for something, not get it, and then they'll say, well, you still need it, pay for it again. So these kind of
to answer, or not, sorry to interrupt you, but to give a little bit of insight, the cost of a license, permit, and identification card fees for a driver's license class A, B, C, E, F, and M, which would be your 8-year, it would last for 8 years, costs $32 to acquire your license in Georgia or an identification card. The current Georgia minimum wage is $7.25 per hour.
Wow.
That is the lowest a non-exempt employee in Georgia can legally be paid for work. So
just about 5 to 6
do
hours.
the math. It'd take about 5 or 6 hours after taxes is what it would cost you to go to the DMV. And God only knows, like you said, DMVs in Atlanta, Georgia, I don't know how well they're ran, but that might actually take you 6 or 7 hours just to at least get to the front of the line to actually.
And let's not even talk about, they're only open 9 to 5, so if you have an hourly job, that's at any point you have to take off in order to go to the DMV. So that's 5 to 6 hours of your pay in addition to whatever you had to take off to go to the DMV, assuming you got it on the first time. That being said, if you have a salary desk job where you get your 3 hours PTO to go vote, mandated by the company, plus you have the ability to leave in the middle of the day to go to the DMV, and if there's a correlation between those jobs and race, then it doesn't really, the law itself may have nothing to do with it, but when it had to do with adding, when there was once upon a time back, 1850s, they had a reading test in order before some states had to have a reading test. And if the black population didn't have as high of a literacy rate, you're going to see that the black population is excluded from voting. Not because the law said black people can't vote. You're not going to see that. But when people say it's racist, it's because, well, obviously this is only affecting some people and not others. And if there's a correlation between that and race.
Well, let me play can I play devil's advocate just for a second here? And
yes.
and I just want to throw this out here. At some point, I want to think that it comes down to a matter of responsibility for the voter. If it is important enough for you to decide and to know that you're going to want to vote, this is an important election coming up or whatever, then I need to be diligent in getting myself to make sure, check with my county clerk's office or circuit clerk's office that I am eligible to vote, that I do have. At what point do we? I think that we can be accommodating, and again, I'm not saying this to sound. There has to be some sense of responsibility for the voter that if they want to vote bad enough, they need to. But I'm also against. You need to have longer vote. You can't just say, "Well, we're going to cut it off at 6 o'clock." You can't do that.
Especially in big cities and stuff. And I gotta go off what Sam was saying. He made a really good point about the DMVs and stuff, in the cities. For me, I've been in Chicago for a while. I still haven't gotten my Illinois driver's license because the DMVs here are absolutely horrible.
Right.
The lines are terrible. People are literally outside waiting 8 hours in a line. It's ridiculous. So I totally understand that. He makes a really good point. In the cities, it's a little different. You go to Bowling Green, you're in and out.
Right.
Well, and that's crazy because here in Jefferson City, it took me. I've been to the DMV twice in the past, probably month and a half, and both trips took less than 20 minutes. That's how. And I went during peak hours, but that was just the staffing and stuff. But mind you, Jefferson City also has 3 or 4 different DMV offices, and we're not Atlanta, we're not St. Louis, we're not Chicago. So I don't know exactly how many DMV offices you guys have, but that's the difference between a town of a couple thousand compared to hundreds of thousands, even millions. So, I couldn't even imagine what it's like in New York or a place like that. The only thing that I, kind of find it crazy is I understand why people are. It makes sense that you should have to have some kind of identification in order to vote. At least for me, it makes sense that you should have to be able to prove who you are. I understand that the big talk of the world was all this potential voter fraud that and I'm glad that was debunked. I'm glad that was proven untrue. I do think that it is, no matter what, there should always be, in anything, whether there should always be checks and balances for things like voting, just to make sure that there isn't voter fraud. Now, you get into murky water when you start to crumple it all the way in, if there necessarily wasn't a problem. Like the absentee ballots, it's one of those things where maybe I see that they're limiting the time and they're limiting, the window that you can actually turn in an absentee ballot. And I think right now people are still like, that's way too short of a time. But I'm hoping that by next election and once, we start voting again in, a year and a half, whenever it might be for, that 2-year mark, I'm hoping that we, COVID's not as big of a deal, so we won't need the sheer amount of absentee ballots that we had this last election. I think that's where this stemmed to be such a big problem. States were simply just overwhelmed, and that's why there were controversy. That's why there was a controversy. I don't think the next election is going to have the sheer amount of absentee ballots that this last election had. Maybe I'm wrong. I just don't see it happening that way.
And also, you got to remember that.
So it wouldn't surprise me if, we see, the absentee ballots. Those are going to be a lot cleaner. We're not going to have the issue the next election, I'm hoping, where people are like, why are they not, don't count the ballots, or count the ballots 2 weeks after the fact, right? We're not going to be waiting to see who's going to be the president, 3 weeks after the election. I'm hoping, fingers crossed. But
also, you have to remember that you had a candidate literally saying,
you guys,
Yes.
go ahead. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, for whatever reason,
Sam
I will let
just
one
made
of
a
you
really
guys
good point.
talk. I cannot hear you all, so I'm going to try to figure this out on my.
Okay.
Let's just say it.
Yeah. Sam, you just made a really good point, though.
You literally
say
had
that again.
You had one candidate literally saying, "Do not mail in ballots. Go in person. COVID is not real." So you literally had someone say, "Hey, if you want to vote for me, do it in person." And the other person says, "Hey, if you want to stay at home, stay at home. If you want to go to the ballots, go to the ballots. But do what you need to do." So when people are saying, well, it's just a little fishy that there's a correlation of mail-in ballots and political party, it doesn't really seem fishy if you just listen to what, if your team captain says, hey, do it this way, and everybody agreed.
Well, I just have I have a friend of mine who was watching a show, but she didn't want to be identified, but she did want to say this. She said, the issue being discussed is race and economics, but what about the elderly, non-drivers who no longer have a license, living on a fixed income, who may not be in good health to visit a DMV to get a non-driver's ID? Doesn't this rule of having a driver's license affect them as well? And I would say yes, totally yes to that, because whenever you try to go with somebody and say, I'm going to, here's how big your box is. Here's how big your box is to say, okay, here's your voting square. You've got from here to here. Okay. Now we're going to tighten it up from here to here. Okay. Now put all of the elements that we've talked about. Sam mentioned people who are working, the 40-hour week minimum wage job, who cannot afford to take off the time to go and say, I've got to go to the DMV. Take out you've got the elderly, and so this is one of those things I almost want to say, and Travis, you can tell me what you think about this, but I think that this is almost a knee-jerk reaction law. And I'm with you, Sam. I'm very much a moderate, but I think that this law was a knee-jerk reaction, something that, Donald Trump had claimed had happened and was happening. And okay, so now we've got to crack down. And in doing so on this crackdown, this turns into a major issue. So
100% right. This was made reactionarily. This specifically addresses the argument, the confrontation. That's not the word. Controversy. This addresses the controversy of why was there a mail-in ballot correlation? This addresses mail-in ballots, which doesn't really get talked or arbitrated very often. And then all of a sudden, one of the candidates says, well, I don't like the mail-in. There was one drop box in Minnesota that was a problem. That one drop box in Minnesota is what single-handedly swung the votes. But that's what everyone was arguing about. So so George is saying, yeah, we feel as if there was a problem. Also, Sean's muted, if that's part of the problem. But either way, it is 100% a reactionary move. The effect, because here's the biggest problem of all. If we really believed in voter freedom, getting an accurate and fair count, and really getting...
Sounds like you guys can hear me fine. I hope I'm not interrupting anyone. I'm going to mute myself again. I'm still just... I can't hear anyone speaking, so...
Okay.
Give me a moment. Keep up the conversation.
Okay.
Okay, let's put it this way. If I can pay my taxes, and I can sign up for my taxes online, if I can renew my passport, a document that is a matter of national security. If you're handing out free passport or doing fake passports, that's a lot of prison time, right?
Yes.
What's the punishment for voter fraud? Probably like a couple $100 and a hey, don't do that again. Like it's or at most probably a year in prison.
Right.
That's just a bullshit guess. So feel free to look it up. But
we've talked about this in past episodes too. I addressed this with my course where I teach in the heart of red country, and I knew before this even came out that there was going to be all of this talk about saying, oh, there was voter fraud, there was voter fraud, there was voter fraud, and I threw the numbers up on. I actually threw them. I drew the election numbers up on the board for my kids. In the 2016 election, Trump lost by I want to say it was less than 200,000 votes nationwide. Okay, and he wins the election, but yet the Electoral College then worked fine. But now here we are in 2020. And he loses by over 7 million votes, and now there's voter fraud.
Yeah.
You cannot have it. Listen, I am for democracy, and when somebody says, "Well, this isn't working the right way, the way I want it to work," so I'm going to pitch a fit. You can't do that, And to me, that is a terrible way of looking at it.
It's the worst thing too, because it's like, because right now we have tech companies, we have people that we could hire today to create a perfectly safe, secure online voting system tomorrow linked to the U.S. government, using smart, we could do it. We could have the same with tax reform. TurboTax has done for the government that. They say, hey, we'll create you a free tax filing program. Everyone can just sign up for it, and it'll tell you exactly what you need to pay. We could just do all of that tomorrow. But unfortunately, anything that we do to change is going to affect one party a good way or the bad way. If everybody in America voted tomorrow, it would affect one party greater or worse. I don't know. I don't have the stats. But for voter suppression is a good way to stay in power if you're somebody who,
right?
A bunch of your incumbents just don't give a shit if you're in power, because everybody's just going to keep voting for what's been happening. Nobody really cares. Nobody really changes. But if you were to give everybody completely free, completely 100% accessible voting, someone's going to be upset. So you're going to hear some bad news.
And again, here's the double standard too. In the state of Illinois, I've lived in Pittsfield for 16, it'll actually be 17 years in November. I have never once had to show my ID. Never. I've never had to show my ID. And what's ridiculous about that is all you have to do is, they ask you to sign, they have this 3-ring binder, and by our ballots are tear out from this big 3-ring binder, and I sign my name next to what my signature's right there. I have to sign right by it. The election judge looks at it, Okay, that's good. Tear it out. Here you go. No, no, no double. No ID, no anything. And then and see, and this is something that's foreign to, like we said, people from the Midwest. And I mean, in these small towns, they can't identify with this because all they've ever known is, Joe Blow down there at the election place knows me, and all I have to do is show up. And I mean, like I said, I've never had to show it.
And you pin your vote on the donkey's ass, and then you walk out. And then they slap the ass, and it runs it all the way to Washington, and it tells you exactly who won in that county.
All right.
Voting is the simplest process I've ever seen.
That's
how I voted.
And what's bad about it is in some of these states that are controlled, and that's the other thing too. And you guys can, Missouri's not like this, but Illinois is. I mean, it really doesn't. Our votes are suppressed anyway because downstate. I mean, our votes don't matter. I mean, Chicago runs the state. I mean, and they everything that happens. I mean, even on our state legislative level, everything that happens is controlled by Chicago. I voted. So I just said, everybody's like, well, you're wasting your. I voted for. So in the last two elections, I voted for libertarians. And they said you're wasting your vote. I said. No, not really. If I lived in Chicago, maybe my vote would have been wasted. But since I don't live in Chicago, my vote really doesn't matter. So it's okay.
No, I don't think.
Well, and that's an interesting thing that you bring up because I had this conversation with it's younger individuals that I seem to have this conversation with. Not so many people that are older or out of high school. But I heard that thrown around a lot this election was that if you voted Libertarian, you were wasting your vote. And more so, those individuals, at least the ones that I interacted with, more so told me that a vote for the Libertarian Party was a vote for Trump. And
that's okay. Hold on, that is a dumb statement.
It is. It is.
But what you're about to say is what I tell everybody. You ever play a board game and it was clear that you weren't going to win, so you just said fuck it and let's just
right.
Let's just make sure that no. If you just continue to play, you can choose. I've lost board games before where I was coming in third, and then I just get to decide who wins. I get to say, all right, then I'll just pool my resources and throw it over here. And if you don't believe that strategic voting exists, then I do not want you on my team in any sport or game. If you don't believe that strategy can be used to get your secondary desires accomplished. Like in Canada, where I'm originally from, strategic voting is part of the game. They've moved past, well, the conservatives aren't going to win, so I'm not going to vote at all. Or I'm going to vote for the Radical Marijuana Libertarian Party, which is the actual name of an actual party.
It's a pretty cool party. We need that party here in America.
So you're like, well, I'm not going to win, so I'm just going to vote for them. No, there's in Canada for your region, your district, you directly vote for that person. If you win, they get a seat. The party that has a majority of the seats, their party leader becomes Prime Minister of Canada.
Right.
So you can decide real quick. Well, if I hate Trudeau and I really want the Conservatives or I don't want the Liberals in power, you can say, well, I'm not going to vote for Trudeau, but this region, it's more likely that the Green Party is going to win. So let me vote for Green Party, or literally anyone but the Red. And then the Liberals are red in Canada. So I know that's a split for some people. It definitely was weird for me. If you don't believe in strategic voting, you're just an unstrategic person, and that's okay. You don't need to be a master, strategician in order for me to have respect for you. But I don't want you on my team if you give up because you're like, oh well, my vote, sorry.
That's two things I want to say there. Number one, that's why I'm jealous of the parliamentary system of government. The parliamentary system of government would solve, in my opinion, a lot of these problems. Because in a parliament, and Sam, you can correct me on anything that I'm wrong on here, But when you look at it, so what he just said is the way it works there. So your prime minister is not really, he's not really the chief executive, but he represents he is the leader of the party that's in control. And if I'm correct in thinking this, the party in control can remove him at any time.
They can call for another election.
Right, or like a vote of no confidence, right?
Yeah, it's so like so he is the chief executive. So it is not full parliamentary. It's still a constitutional parliamentary system. So like he becomes prime minister and he's in charge, but like they can easily say, all right, look, let's hold another election right now. There aren't term limits. There's no like fixed. I don't know how re-elections are started, but like it's not every 4 years. So like Stephen Harper was in office for like 9.5 years or something like that. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I can tell you right off the cuff that his first parliamentary style is awesome.
Yeah, and I think it would eliminate. I mean, there's so many different things that I actually had a student one time who said, "Here's an idea," and I loved this idea too. They said, and this is actually, I think they caught something in the textbook. Jimmy Carter actually had tossed this. One good idea that Jimmy Carter came up with was, let's do away with 2 terms. Give it a single 6-year term. Give them a single 6-year term. You eliminate all this election BS and re-election campaign. You don't have to worry about you still have to worry about voter fraud, but I mean, it's the narrative of who's running and who's. I think you eliminate a lot of problems that way too.
Man, that would be catastrophic for the other side if their guy or gal lost for 6 years. If you just really think about those extra 2 years, like would in their minds be catastrophic. But it is crazy to think how advanced Canadian politics seems when it comes to voting, considering that like when a Canadian individual speaks, half of their head comes off of their mouth where their mouth line is. They talk like trash cans. So it's actually really interesting to see that they've got voting down. And Sam, I love the term uses. You're correct. Is not everyone has to be a master statistician, but everyone should be a master debater, because when it comes down to your views and your thoughts, you should be able to master debate all over the place. All right.
God.
No matter where you are.
Stop it.
Whenever you can.
Stop it. One of our viewers did say Biden gets my vote of no confidence. So I tell you what, I really am concerned about the state of our political system right now, though, because if I am to look at, if the rest of the world looks at us, we have to be we have to be a sitcom to the rest of the world right now, because.
Do you know? Oh no! Hold on. Pause. Wait. I have not heard anything about Biden's reign that's been anything abnormal to the rest of the experience to any other president before Trump. Trump, who literally said, "Let us ban an entire religion of people from America." Trump, who literally was just making fun of people for being handicapped.
Yep.
He was literally banned from other countries traveling to and from on regular occasions. Not just one country, like several European countries are like, this guy doesn't give a shit about COVID. No, I don't want him here. This guy does not is literally a joke and is dangerous to a political structure. I don't want him here. Though they looked at us as if there was a big sitcom, if we were a sitcom then. Right now, Biden is whatever. If he's a nobody, if he's he's out of the news for the most part.
On purpose.
Yeah, well, and that's what's I will give Biden credit where credit's due. The times that he makes the news are literally when he slips on a shoelace walking up to his plane. Yeah. Like that was news. Like we're literally, the headline was like, so when the hell's Kamala stepping in because homeboy can't even keep himself upright. I will say, I don't care what anyone says. I saw virtually no difference between Trump's addressing the union and Biden's addressing the union, because as much bullshit rhetoric that Trump would spew, Biden was just having trouble getting his words together. So at the same time, you're both just listening to two guys.
Exactly. And this is the best. And what kills me is this is the best that we can offer of the best bright political minds. And I love listening to some of these. I mean, you know, you look at the different news shows. Democrats have a lot of bright young talent. And I'm not going to even. Please don't say AOC, but they have a lot of. The Democrats have a lot of bright young talent. The Republicans have a lot of bright young talent, and all we're able to do is to wheel these geriatrics out there who can't even, like you said, Sean, string together a sentence without having a card in front of them.
Well, that was the issue. Is like I love Kamala Harris as vice president. I think she is an incredible, outspoken individual who is articulate and who is actually very concise, and actually, I genuinely believe cares about the American people and cares about the job that she's doing. And again, I'm talking nothing aside, but if we really wanted a deep dive, if we didn't know the actual state of health of President Biden, because we really don't know, God forbid, you know, is he 78, 79?
78.
Like
he's 78.
There's always that, you know, talk of how if something was to happen, I am not opposed to her stepping in and becoming the president of the United States. I honestly wish it would have been her as the presidential candidate and Biden as the vice presidential candidate. We both know, or all of us know, that Trump probably would have won that election just because there needed to be that name brand in the House in order for that sway to happen, I at least think. But I genuinely believe that, you know, Mike Pence was a really quiet individual. We didn't really hear from him a whole lot because of the show that was Donald Trump, that was in, you know, the news constantly, 24/7 was in the news. Pence usually was able to kind of hide in the background until he did have something going on, and usually, you know, if it had to do anything with the Senate, we would kind of see echoes and people talking about him, but very rarely did we see him in the headlines. And I genuinely do think that Kamala is actually going to be pulling a lot more weight in this presidency, and I'm happy to see it. And I would not be surprised if after these 4 years, or even 8 years maybe, if she decided to step in and run for president. I wouldn't be opposed to that either.
Well, Joe Biden, when he was vice president, he changed the way being a vice president was. I admired Joe Biden as a vice president because I remember watching his last day in the Senate, preside over the Senate, and you had Republicans and Democrats from both sides of the aisle who were complimenting him, who were saying, this guy knows how to work, this guy knows what he's doing, this guy knows, you know, how to bring people together. And now you've had this break where I think the worst thing that Joe could have done to himself was take 4 years off. I mean, I think if Joe would have ran in 2016, he would have blown the doors off Donald Trump back then too.
I think the two worst things that, you know, Joe might have done is, you know, not kept the leash on Hunter Biden and has allowed his dog to continually bite people throughout the White House. And, you know, that's just
Hunter Biden is probably his biggest problem right now.
For sure. I think that's Hunter Biden seems to be the Republicans' last real grip on. Well, I wouldn't even say Republicans. I would say Trumponites. That's their last big grip on. Yeah. On some kind of scandal.
And that's the thing that really bugs me is that everybody that says, like, you know, Trump is the second coming of Jesus. Sure, you're allowed to believe that, but like, do you really believe that the dog biting someone is worse than, I don't know, paying off a porn star to keep quiet about your sex affair? Like, in what world are those equal scandals?
I don't know, man. How hard did the dog bite?
No,
how hard did she bite?
Yeah, and
these are the questions we ask.
Well, Sharon Dugan says Joe needs to teach Hunter how to hide in the basement. So yeah, I think that. Go ahead, Sean.
I did see something on here it's kind of unrelated, so I will sway it away. But it was one of the comments I saw earlier. From Colby, and I thought it was kind of interesting because it seemed kind of out of left field. And I'm not sure if it was just I missed the conversation you guys were having, but one of them was we kind of had this talk recently, and I kind of want to bring it back because I just see that he's talking about it. says sports should stay out of politics. Did you guys kind of talk anything about?
No, we meant no,
Okay.
no.
The MLB All-Star game.
Okay.
Yeah, we.
Okay, that's right.
And
That's right.
I made a comment like celebrities and athletes were also speaking out as well.
Right. Well, one of the big things is I see that term a lot, but what blows my mind is sports have always been around politics. That's not new. That dates all the way back to, the Colosseum in Rome when that was a sporting event, right? Headed by
Your politicians, right?
And politicians went to celebrate and to create laws. And the Olympics, if you don't think that the Olympics aren't a big, giant political bundle of fancy fireworks that we see at the beginning opening ceremonies, you're completely wrong. Because literally, look at what sports can do to countries like Brazil, right? After they come in and go. Like, look at the damage that sports can do. Sports have always been political. Now I think it sucks for teams like the Braves that have a brand new renovated stadium. It sucks that was Atlanteans taxpayers' money that have now paid for those facilities that now will not get the tourism, that will not get that boom of business. I know, look at March Madness. The cities that were affected by that normally have
St. Louis,
giant wave.
St.
Kansas
Louis
City is a big one that usually would boom during was it Big 12 weekend, I believe? Or when March Madness was.
Normally rolls one into the other. The first week's always held after Big 12. March Madness first round is almost always at the Sprint Center.
Yep, and in St. Louis too.
So regardless of, and I'm not talking about just individuals on the television screen that bring, but politics and sports have gone hand in hand because of the spectacle that sports are, and because of the money that sports bring to cities. Sports at this point, it's unavoidable. Sports will always be political. I could even go back to even in Pike County. I don't know if you guys remember, Travis, we might have talked about this. There was a time when we were in high school that they were going to build a
racetrack.
A racetrack.
Yeah, or speed lane. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was so excited. There were individuals that were excited because that would have produced jobs in the area.
I was pumped.
And would have been. I was extremely pumped, but it didn't happen because of politics. Because because certain individuals of power didn't let it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Sports have always been political and will continue to be political. Keep the megastars like LeBron James or Kaepernick or anyone that may speak. That's what individuals say when they want their sports and politics separated. That's what they're talking about. But at the same time,
I'm gonna just go out and you said superstar and then said Colin Kaepernick.
Yes.
As a person who likes what Colin Kaepernick did, I am also an objective football fan. I'm grasp on what football is.
Yes.
Hey, I never said Kaepernick was a football superstar. I just said that now he's a superstar.
Sharon Dugan also.
Speaking of superstars, that's how I'm going to segue into this next.
Go for it.
I want to talk about for our what's trending in the world. So I want to roll back. I want to say it's been at least 5 or 6 years now. The internet and the world was introduced to the Catch Me Outside gal.
Oh, God.
Who, for those of you that don't know, the Catch Me Outside gal was a 13-year-old individual who went on Dr. Phil and coined the famous phrase, "Catch me outside, how about that?"
You're pronouncing
And it was,
Cash Me Outside?
Cash me outside.
How about that? How about that? And she rose to internet fame, became an internet meme at the time where memes were really, really kind of starting to take off in the mainstream, that even, our parents were saying, "Oh, you see that meme or that meme about the old 13-year-old?" That's how my mom talks, like a 90-year-old woman, I guess. But no, she turned that 15 minutes into a career as a rapper under the name Bhad Bhabie. Bhad Bhabie, who sings hits such as Gucci Flip Flops, which I will tell you is a banger. I mean, that song has heat. It's got Lil Yachty on it. And if you're ever, chasing squats with a pump in the gym, I'd recommend turning on some Gucci Flip Flops. It'll change your workout. But This individual recently turned 18, whopping probably 10 days ago. This is very recent. And upon her 18th birthday, as we've discussed, we've thrown the term around, for those of you guys that don't know, OnlyFans, which is another thing, aside from her getting on, has actually made more waves because there's talks of it might become a publicly traded company. But more on that later as I learn more. But Bhad Bhabie, at 18, has signed up for an OnlyFans, and within 6 hours, sold enough subscriptions to make $1 million. Gentlemen, did you make $10 in your last 6 hours?
No.
See, well,
Sick. To me, that is just this child. I'm just going to call her what she is. This child has milked her 15 minutes of fame. She had I watched she had a Snapchat series, and I watched some of her, and I would just like, she was so, I mean, even at whatever it was, 17 or 16, when she had this last 2 years, she was so childish and so immature, and just, I was like, her mother, she walks all over her mother still, and now she's milking this. To me, she just looks like a, piece of trash that just needs to be taken out. And how she made $1 million in 6 hours is beyond me.
Oh, I mean, it's pretty obvious. She was on a TV show about being a out of control young teenager who would just party and sleep around at the age of 13. And a lot of people were like, yo, like, look at this girl. She's like it kind of plays to a lot of people's predatory, I wouldn't say predatory.
Yes.
But like, you got a lot of people that are looking at this kid and they're like, oh, that's a hot lady. And then they're like, oh, wait, she's a child. But she's sleeping around. So like so whatever, that's good, put on spotlight. And then she made herself, I'm a meme, but I'm a bad girl, like, and she just did that for the next 4 years, kept it up, and had enough people asking to see her naked for the last 4 years that she says, all right, cool, I'll put a bikini photo online and make $1 million. And
well, literally, that was the tweet said, I got tired of y'all asking, so here you go. So it's just like, were y'all asking before?
That's to me, that's just straight. That's straight pedophilia.
Well, exactly. Is there was a lot of the conversation behind it was a lot of individuals that were angry because they were talking about how this was predatorial behavior from like older men. It literally kind of was like whoever these individuals that paid for this that are older, that are older gentlemen that were just like waiting, like a countdown. It's like that's still predatorial behaviors just because like the clock ticks 12. Like
so so let me ask an important question. Is it predatory? So is having sex with a 17-year-old predatory because it's against the law, or because or because of why the law was made? The law was made because having sex with 17-year-olds was wrong.
I think it's because, and I've been in education for a long time, the amount of things that kids think they know and that they feel that they are responsible enough to do at 16 is ridiculous. And at 18, they're still, I mean, at 18 years old, I was, I barely knew if I had matching socks on or not, if not from my mother. So, I mean, maybe I was a different generation, but to say that an 18-year-old is mature enough to make a decision like this is going to be something that's obviously she's going to be remembered for. It extends her 15 minutes of fame even longer because now, as one of our people said on our Facebook post, controversy creates money. So now she's in the limelight for an even longer period of time, which this is going to be a child. Here's the thing. When everything starts going south for her, I give her about another 10 to 15 years. She could probably milk this for that amount of time. then you're going to have a mentally distraught person who has been used to living in the limelight because of her sassiness or whatever you want to say. And at 35 or 40, she's going to be totally spent and at the end of the rope. And if she hasn't blown that $1 million by then, I'll be surprised.
Well, no. Here's the important thing to remember. We're talking about her responsibility and her ability to make decisions. And it's not blow that $1 million by in the next 10 years. It's she's made $1 million in the span of 6 hours. Now, assume some drop off in the rate in which she's going to accumulate that money. Mm-hmm. But it's not $1 million in 10 years. It's $1 million, that's $1 million a day.
Yeah.
That is an absurdly high amount of money that is easily, it is completely easily. She, as an 18-year-old, is like, hey, I'm going to make a decision. And that decision made her $1 million. So we can say we don't know, she's not mature enough. All 18-year-olds aren't capable, have the mental capacities to make these decisions. But do recall that, if I made a decision right now that made me $1 million, everyone would look at me and be like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
You go for it, you do it. And if she made this decision at 18, if she waited another year at 19, if she did it at 21, at any given point, her making this decision, just the fact that, she hit that 18, the only thing that hitting 18 does is that everybody knows that OnlyFans is not liable for a crime. If she did that on her Snapchat Premium or something, a less formal way of doing it, nobody would have blinked twice, and everyone would have said, well, she's allowed to do that. Basically, it wouldn't have been as big of a problem. I'll put it that way.
But I wanted to look at this, though, from the standpoint, though, Sam, of I'm looking at more of a well-being of, still, and again, this is the 46-year-old guy in the room talking, but this is still the welfare of a child that we're still talking about. And even though that Dr. Phil's he's not a bit, he's a lot on the douchey side. He's I think at that time when that whole show came out, what'd you say, Sean, when she was 16 or whatever? 13. And so, to me, a child, and to me, that's just 5 years ago. To me, it's still a child. And I think that she's making decisions. I think, she made $1 million. Good for her. But no, I don't think anybody's looking out for her well-being anymore. And I'm more concerned about her as a person. And I think this behavior could really come back to bite her in the butt later on. That's just what I wanted to say about that.
There were two things I wanted to chirp in on with it. One of the things, and I don't have the exact number. I tried Googling it and I couldn't get the exact. I will try to find that article to, correct any misgivings. But when I read the last article, I think I'm finger crossing and hope I'm saying this right. That OnlyFans is a $1 billion a year company, is the kind of revenue that they churn out. And I'm fairly certain I saw that there was over 75 individuals on that site alone who make over $1 million annually on their pages. One of those individuals is like a 36-year-old former teacher that quit teaching to, pursue this full time. There's an actual market behind it. Yes. But one of the things was, I don't want to necessarily compare her to this individual, because this individual took a situation and turned it into a multi-billion-dollar, dynasty. Could she potentially be like another Kim Kardashian, to where she could turn this into like a dynasty of, at a young age, did something that some people might consider a mistake. However, that mistake led to a family, regardless of what people might think of the family or how they live their lives, created multiple billionaires, and then multi-millionaires, a family dynasty that really kind of started the trend, regardless whether or not people want to admit it, that family's name was brought back and thrust in the spotlight because of a sex tape. Mm-hmm. This individual breaking OnlyFans records might have now thrust herself into a situation where potentially maybe this turns into something where it's like, look at things that Kim has done where people might always talk about how she's stupid, but she was on the phone with the president helping people, assisting individuals get out of prison, out of wrongful lifelong sentences, has turned her work into charity. I'm not necessarily saying that this is the same thing that this individual is going to do. But when we look 10 years down the road, this might have been the best decision she's ever made. But is it going to be a mistake? Or something that people might think is a mistake, or you're selling yourself? But hypothetically, there's a chance now, financially, she set herself up in a situation where she can start a real brand, a real marketing, get the right team behind her, which I'm sure she already has because she's had a successful career up to this point. I don't necessarily see her becoming the next Kim Kardashian and really starting something like that. But as immature as it might seem, I do think that, like, OnlyFans legitimately, in this article that I read, talked about how this last year during the pandemic was the most profitable year that it's ever had. Simply for reasons like this is a site where individuals can, like, I guess, you can pay money to message these individuals that are on this website. You can physically pay just to have the opportunity to message them on the site, and they can message you back. So in a time where people are locked in into themselves, sites like, we joke around about it a lot, but like sites like The Hub and OnlyFans saw the most profitable record years because people were pumping stimulus money into premium subscriptions.
Well, actually,
So,
I'll tell you what I believe. This is silly, but I actually have a firm belief as to why that is. I believe it is 100% because, let's just say, the hottest girl in your high school growing up, or your town, or anything.
Was me.
You've thought about her. You've wanted to, like, you were curious about what she looked like naked. She sent a naked picture to the dude in class that she really liked, and he showed it around to everybody, and like that was a big problem. Now you have an era in which that girl, instead of like hiding it, is like, actually, I'm super proud of my nudes. You can pay, any one of you can pay, and you can all see it. I had a coworker that she got an OnlyFans like during the pandemic because everybody was like, well, I need a way to make money now. So I think that all came from, you have a lot more content creators, you have a lot more people that are bored at home, don't have jobs, or on unemployment, and are like, well, what's a cheap, pretty much tax-free way of making money?
Right.
And everybody, like, you have a huge creation of suppliers. You have a lot more people that have added on to the contributors list, and you have a whole lot of their inner circles, people they've met through life, who are like, yeah, I've actually kind of always wanted to see her naked. I had a coworker that I mentioned I have a coworker, and I'm like, I thought about it for a second, and I'm like, man, is that worth $5? It might be worth $5. And to those regards, like, if you ask me where I think, like, why they had such a profitable year, it might be stimmy money, sure, but more likely, you just have everybody and their mothers, has a topless photo on there, and there are some people that it'd be worth dropping that $5. So you just have, like, it's just a straight market thing.
I'm my voice of reason in this is for the fact of and call me a prude or whatever. I think that this is to me a systemic problem with society. Call me a prude, call me whatever you want to, but to I think we were talking about predatory things before, and this is just a lot of the root of this starts with stuff like this. And I mean, people call stuff like OnlyFans, and you talked about the old hub there, Sean. I'm afraid of what there's got to come a time, I think, when people have to look at this for what it is, and people call it adult entertainment, and I don't know if you've watched any of the acting in some of that. I don't even think qualifies as entertainment because I've seen better acting at a Christmas program hosted by my third and fourth graders. So I mean, I don't know if I don't know if saying that this is entertainment. It's just I think it's people like you said, people who are people who are at home alone and need something to do. I guess, but I mean, I just can't. I'm glad that she made her $1 million. Good for her, but at the same time, it's going to promote more exploitation of people who really aren't in the right mind to make those decisions.
But I mean, absolutely. But you know what? So does the stock market.
Yeah.
You can literally gamble your entire way on the stock market on the basis of making good career decisions. But we don't make regulations or rules on that. Like, you can't invest in the stock market. Like, you can't create your own Roth IRA. You can create. Sorry, what am I saying? You can create your own Roth IRA at 13, and you can worry about the tax implications of what's going to happen when you're 69 and a half. Like, that's when I joined the military and they said, hey, you can take a bullet at 18, but you can't have a beer till 21.
Yeah.
I think that's the same regards as hey, I want to put a picture of my boobs online. Yeah, who knows? Maybe it might be an immature decision, but there are loads of immature decisions you can make legally. The actual
one of those immature decisions would be me paying $5 to look at your boobs.
I was just getting ready to say, Sam, after seeing your stand-up, I'd pay $5 to see your boobs. So sure.
I've been working real hard to make sure they go away, but unfortunately,
You just made $10 in 13 seconds. I think you should start an OnlyFans, Sam.
I think I think I would just do a talk show where I just interviewed different people named Sam and just call it Only Sam's.
That's good stuff right there.
That would be amazing.
Well, gentlemen, I will say we've been rolling, and so I do believe I can say this was some of the most fun I've had. I love the conversation today, especially everything kind of chiming in, and I had a blast. I definitely think we'll see more come out of things in Georgia. I'll be interested to see what other effects. I'm sure that even in this next week, we'll see other companies, other individuals either start to pull in, or you might actually see other companies or individuals start to pump money into Georgia because they like those kind of laws and they like where things are headed. Sam, thank you so much.
Yes.
You were an awesome guest. Round of applause for you, my friend.
Thank you, Sam.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, man.
I appreciate it.
Please come on again.
No, we will definitely have you
we gotta
back,
have
Sam.
more.
Is there anything, Andy, Travis, Sam, is there anything you guys would like to say to our guests before we sign off here tonight?
As always, thank you for all of the comments tonight. We had a lot of good people adding on, so thank you for that. Thank you for all the comments offline and everything that you guys continue to share this with your friends. Check out our YouTube page, Voice of Reason Podcast 2021 on YouTube, and you can catch all of our episodes on there.
Yeah, thank you guys for listening, and thanks for the interaction too. It makes it fun for us. And Sam, thank you again.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, awesome episode, guys.
All right. Stay safe, everyone.
All right. Thank you all so much for listening to the Voice of Reason podcast. I'm your host, Sean Phillips, and I was alongside my co-host, Mr. Andy Van Beber and Travis Kirkendall. Thank you all so much for giving us a listen. Don't forget to check us out on YouTube and Facebook, the Voice of Reason podcast 2021, and we will see you guys next week for another great conversation.
See you guys.
Bye.